Vancouver Canucks just one more win away from advancing to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time since 2020 and just the second time in the last 13 years. To talk about tonight's Game 6 in Nashville, let's bring in Farhan Lalji. Farhan, so let's see. Demko, DeSmith, and Shilovs have all earned wins so far in this series for the Vancouver Canucks. Demko is still out recovering. DeSmith is now healthy. Shilovs, after a win, lost his last outing. Who starts tonight's Game 6?
Well, it certainly looks as though it's going to be Shilovs that gets the start tonight. He was the first off the ice. Rick Tocchet wouldn't confirm it after the game. He was kind of creatively asked, how does it feel to think about starting Artur Shilovs? And he had some good things to say about it. But it's an interesting decision because I kind of felt that as soon as they felt that DeSmith was 100% healthy and potentially with Shilovs coming off a loss, it was the easy decision to go back to to DeSmith at that point, knowing that, you still have one more game to go. Whereas if you play Shilovs tonight, it becomes really difficult to turn to DeSmith for a potential Game 7, knowing that you've kind of worked past him in this game. But I just don't think right now Rick Tocchet wants to think that far ahead. He is purely believing that Shilovs gives him the best opportunity to win tonight. Now, as far as DeSmith is concerned, he was kind of average in that Game 2 loss, but after that, in the win that he got in Game 3, he played much better, and Shilovs has been fine, but he hasn't necessarily stood on his head and been the reason the Canucks have won or lost games. But right now, he's, as far as the coach is concerned and his decision-making, he just believes the kid's got a better opportunity, and he is definitely Ian Clark's guy, right? I mean, Clark stood on the table for this guy at the draft, really loves everything he's done everything he can to kind of build him in his mold. So I know that Ian Clark has a lot of input into this decision as well. I know that DeSmith got on the ice early with Tocchet and Clark, and they had some conversations yesterday. So it really does feel like this is an in-game decision, a decision about now as opposed to health-related. It does feel like Casey DeSmith is fully ready to go in this game, but they've just decided to go with Shilovs.
I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but last time Tocchet was talking about Thatcher Demko, he was saying he's week to week. Now Demko is back skating. If the Canucks made it to the second round, is there a chance we could see Demko back in these playoffs?
Yeah, well, certainly it does look like they're trying to make that happen, right? He did skate yesterday, as expected to skate after the optional morning skate today. So he's not doing any goaltending drills or anything like that, anything that dynamic. But the fact that he's on the ice is good news. There had been some reports early on that he might be done for the playoffs altogether, or potentially he plays in the conference finals. Then we heard late in round 2 was a possibility. So look, you don't get these opportunities often, so I think they're going to try to be as aggressive as possible with it, assuming that he can't do any more in the way of injury to it, right? But Demko's going to be one of those guys who's going to want to do everything he can to get back, and the club will kind of keep that door open for him. So late in round 2 still feels like a stretch to me, but it doesn't seem like the Canucks have taken that off the table.
The finalists for this year's Jack Adams were announced earlier today. Rick Bowness of the Winnipeg Jets, and the other two, both from your series, Rick Tocchet and Andrew Burnett. Have you seen anything from them in this series that says, hey, now I know why this guy's coach of the year, because I like what they're doing in terms of adjusting to the other guy's coaching so far?
No. When you look at what both these guys have done, it's been stay the course. It's been be consistent. Neither one of them has made any kind of significant decisions to alter their lineup, right? And there isn't necessarily that 13th experienced forward that's just chomping at the bit to get into the lineup. Neither team really has that, so you can't do much. Now, in the case of Tocchet, he's taken some criticisms because he's had a couple of opportunities in this series in games that they've lost where he could have challenged a call, challenged the goal, the game-tying goal in Game 5 in the third period, and whether or not it was goalie interference. There have been some moments like that throughout this series, and he has decided not to make those challenges. Now, you can't look at any of them and say they were clearly decisions that would have been overturned, right? I mean, those things are difficult to do. It's hard to tell where the NHL is going to go in terms of standard on goaltender interference, because they've had some love taps in certain games that have been overturned, and there have been some others that have been more egregious that haven't been. So I get why he hasn't done it. He wants to know for sure. I personally think he should have taken the chance on that goal in Game 5 because of how well his penalty killing was doing. I think it was worth the risk in that moment. But the other thing that he's been asked about is line changes, and he hasn't done any of that, right? Elias Pettersson has had some moments on selected shifts where they've reunited the Lotto line and put Pettersson with Miller and Besser. And quite frankly, Pettersson hasn't been better in those situations. Like, he hasn't added a jolt to that line. So for those that think, oh, we'll just put them together full time or start a game with that, I'm not sure that's necessarily the right decision. He just doesn't have a lot of cards he can play. You know, the Canucks were supposed to be the deeper team, but we've seen a few of the lines go quiet, and he hasn't wanted to make those adjustments. And the Canucks haven't been the deeper team, Gino. When you look at both of these teams in this series, they've each scored only 12 goals. The Preds have had 11 different goal scorers. The Canucks have had just 6. So it certainly has looked on the surface like maybe the Preds' bottom end of their lineup has been more relevant in this series than the Canucks have. But I just don't know that Tocchet has been given a lot of cards that he can play, even though he's being criticized for maybe not playing any.
It was interesting. I thought one of Tocchet's comments that was interesting when he was asked about his offense says, if you're not scoring, you better be a good defensive team. And that's what we are right now, which is all good and well. But you still have to be able to score. Is there anything you can do to spark a little flame under these guys and get them turned around offensively? Because so far, they're just way underachieving compared to what they did during the regular season.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And they haven't been able to turn the few high danger chances they've had into shots on goal, let alone goals. And in that first loss where Nashville blocked 33 shots and the Canucks, you know, were in the mid 80s for shot attempts in that game, Tocchet was asked about it after, and he said, look, when they do that, they're exposing themselves in certain areas. And now he believes that his team probably has over-adjusted on some of those moments where rather than just trying to take some shots, they've been trying really hard to execute shot passes and get a second stick on pucks and, you know, shoot wide and deflect. And I think now he believes they're trying to do too much. I mean, when you look at Nashville, it's been like 13 and 12 shot blocks in the last 2 games. So they haven't had to block as many shots because the Canucks have missed the net so often or have tried to work around those bodies. And so now I think he's saying that, look, if they come out at you in certain looks, at certain angles, trying to take half the net away, you need to shoot on the net and not try to make that shot pass. So we'll see. I mean, it certainly seems that right now Vancouver is completely in their own heads offensively, both at 5-on-5 and on the power play. Their in-zone play on their 2 power play attempts in the last game wasn't good. Their entries weren't good. Normally, that hasn't necessarily been the problem for them. So, you know, one game you'll say simplify. One game you'll say be creative. It is difficult for this team right now. It has been tough sledding. And through it all, you know, here we are 3-2. The margins have been so fine in every game that it would be difficult for either of these coaches to try to over-adjust because they just haven't been far away in any of the games.
So the Oilers are home and cooled. They clinched back on Wednesday. They've already had a couple of days off. If the Vancouver Canucks can't clinch the series tonight, then it gets extended. Suddenly they could be facing an Edmonton Oilers team that is super well rested. Is there a sense of urgency on the team, not only to win this series, but to win it tonight, because they don't want to give such a huge advantage to the next round opponent McDavid and the Oilers?
Yeah, Gino, I'm not necessarily convinced they're thinking about Edmonton right now. I just think they want to do whatever they can to find a way to win this series and potentially do it tonight, right? I mean, you know, we've talked before about how the longer you wait in any given series, the more you run the risk. It's not just fatigue. And certainly we see a player like Quinn Hughes who looks like, you know, physically things have taken a toll a little bit. It's just a case of you open yourself up to other injury possibilities. And I think they want to do everything they can to win this thing tonight and to get it done tonight and not get into a winner-take-all Game 7. But the thought of winning all 3 games in Nashville certainly does seem like a stretch, doesn't it? Even though Nashville has won 2 of 3 games in Vancouver. But I think if you put everything on tonight and then all of a sudden you don't do it, what do you have left emotionally in the tank with no momentum for a potential Game 7? So, you know, at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to hold back emotionally or in terms of lineup investment, who they play, how much they play them. It's going to come down to whether or not Vancouver's best players can finally find a way to be their best, in my opinion. You know, you look at how Nashville has been able to find a way to get their defense a little more active in their last game. You know, Vancouver's done a bit of that with Hughes, and they've done a bit of it with Zadorov, but they need guys like Philip Hronek and others to get involved. I mean, I can't believe here we are, Game 6 of the playoffs, and we're talking about Elias Pettersson as an X factor, Gino. An $11.6 million player, an X factor. Like, at some point, this kid's got to show up. You know, the Lindholm line, you know, they were great in Game 1. They were great in overtime. They've got to be more noticeable throughout this Game 6. So, you know, I think Miller, Hughes, and Besser, and certainly Zadorov are doing all they can. It's time for some other players to step up for Vancouver and to do it again tonight.
All right, Farhan, before we let you go, one other huge item of news information. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. Farhan Lalji is going to be inducted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame this year. Congratulations, my friend. So well deserved.
Thank you so much. Gino, you've been around Canadian football and the CFL for a long time, and it's a remarkable community, right? This isn't the CFL Hall of Fame. It's the Canadian Football Hall of Fame, and the game in this country means everything to me. And the people that are involved, you don't necessarily cheer for teams, you cheer for the game. So it's pretty cool to be a part of that group.
Congratulations, my friend. Well-deserved honor.